All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Coffee is for Closers. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. William Odhams. Welcome,
Special
Will.
indeed.
Happy to be here, guys. It's awesome.
As his mother says.
Long time overdue. So today what we're going to go over is the journey of Will and how he's gone from like not being a closer to being a closer to being a closer in black. To then being a sales sniper and all the things in between.
If you listen to this podcast, you will make your first million within 3 years. I'm going to repeat that. You will make $1 million within 3 years of the first episode you listen to. We don't want pikers. We're not here to save the manatees. We're here to make podcasts. You really want this. You listen and review.
Put that coffee down.
Mr. William, how are we?
Most excellent. Stoked. I've been listening to this podcast this whole time, so I'm happy to finally be a guest.
It's good because you finally given the fans what they want. We've got so many requests. When is Will again?
It's mandatory. We make them watch it.
There we go. Give the people what they want, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So man. So let's just sort of dive straight into it. Like, I guess, first of all, when did we start working together? How long has that been now? A year, right? Just over a year?
About a year, just over a year ago, yeah. We kind of
times have changed.
Around just actually reaching out randomly, I think, on Facebook Messenger and just trying to actually look for kind of more opportunities and get more balls in play. But I actually thought you were an influencer yourself, actually, when I think I was first introduced to you. But then I realized you're just another sales guy, but that wasn't quite the case, right? So, and we kind of started to create some new opportunities, and now we're here.
What was your first account? What did you do?
I was fitness business coaching.
Oh yeah, that guy.
I thought it was someone else.
No, we did that, and we also did the chiropractors and physios as well. But kind of get more into fitness business coaching, and then just selling like more of like that 20 to 30K product opposed to the 5 to 10, and a little bit more of a sophisticated buyer, which was obviously an interesting learning curve as well.
Yeah, because you were
that's right
raising some capital, right?
Well, yeah, I was different. I was used to closing people for about 2K, and not people that had already had a multi-million-dollar business practice and were looking to scale it. So it was a bit of a different type of conversation, but still it was interesting to kind of see the commonalities between them too.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just kind of dive through, like, what is it that got you into sales?
For me, it was almost kind of like, I'm not surprised that I end up here now because of given everything else, because the common theme for me has always been in trying to figure out what I want to do is like people, right? And helping people. And I've done a variety of different activities, but then with a degree in psychology, I didn't really figure out like what that was actually going to equate to. But now that I'm in sales and dealing with people all the time and working in communication, it makes pretty good sense. But I think I kind of got more into sales as a way into entrepreneurship because I was very curious about it at a kind of like post-university. I was like, I don't really feel like the corporate path's for me, but I didn't really have a business idea. So I did go to these entrepreneur business conferences, and a couple people actually shared with me, they're like, okay, kid, you have no idea what you're doing, but that's fine. If you don't have your own business idea right now, work for small startups and learn all the things so you can then, when you do have your business idea, go forth and get after it. So that's kind of how I got into sales, is I pretty much took like a business development role, ran my own territory and figured out what I didn't know. And then kind of like started to figure out, oh, I just talk to people and take orders. This is pretty cool. And yeah, it gets kind of more fun from there.
Yeah, man, for sure. And like your first foray into sort of like closing was through like Dan Locke, right?
Yeah, because I had kind of gotten into personal training and gotten that career up and off the ground. But as I'm sure a lot of personal trainers know, I was doing well, worked my way up to management, but was working like 50, 60 hours a week, making about 3K a month Canadian. And was thinking, I'm like, okay, what's going to really happen in the next 3 years? Like, I'm not married, don't have kids. How am I ever going to have that? And there was only like 2 weeks holiday allowed. So I started to kind of figure out how can I like transition into something, but there were these sales trainings and I was actually homesick with laryngitis. And so I was like, let me just check this out. Worst case, I probably can get like $2,000 worth of value in the next couple of years in sales. So I was like, I'll just wing it, because I was like, I had no idea that you could close deals online over the phone. And so when I actually kind of started looking at that, and I said, hey, like I actually can make more in a couple hours than I did in a whole month. I was like, that's worth exploring. And the further I kind of went into it, I started to like about 3 or 4 months after the program, started to literally make more working half time on the phones than I was full time at the gym. And I was at that point, I was like, all right, time to go all in and see what this looks like when I rep my craft, I guess.
Like, it's an interesting one, right? Because you hear so many people whinge and fucking bitch about Dan Locke. And like, I've never done his courses. Like, I did a YouTube video, which we'll put in the description, about like what I think Dan Locke did well and what I think he did poorly. And like, I think the thing that, like, he was a brilliant marketer. I think his sales training, you know, from what I've seen and what I've heard, was just like pretty much like sales 101. You know what I mean? Like, sort of repackaged. But like $2,000 or $2,500, like everyone who did that course would have gotten that much value out of it for sure.
Yeah, he covered a lot of mindset and kind of fundamentals, and like little did I know, you know, some of it maybe I'm kind of like drawn from other sources for sure. But as far as somebody who had,
I've heard,
like,
inspired,
yeah, well, fair enough, right? But regardless, like for someone who didn't have a lot of clarity over kind of some of the mindset work that maybe some people didn't have in their personal development journey, and then just that basic way to kind of go out and get after it, I think the like almost the contrast and the difficulty is he did a very good job at inspiring people to literally like, good, you put on a suit. Yeah, you go talk to a multi-million-dollar business owner, even if you are 20 years old. Like a lot of people would never do that. So that created a problem in and of itself. But the fact of the matter that people were getting outside of their comfort zones, like those who then recognized with common sense to hone the craft and actually show up professionally, there's a lot of doors that you could open, because I didn't know that you could just go talk to those people, or I didn't think about it that way until you did.
I think $2,000 for that skill set alone, it's just the confidence that you can actually go and get after stuff from a mindset point of view is well worth it. Even if you didn't do
where
the
else can
sales
you
training.
make your investment back? And like, I think I made $2,000 back probably in like 3 months or less. So it's like, that's a pretty good ROI compared to most investments and other things out there. And I had to draw from, like, I didn't have the money to take the course too. Like I was kind of that people that was like, let me think about it. I really don't have the money, because I was making $3,000 a month and that was paying the bills. So I drew from the investments my grandma gave me that said, no, don't touch these until you're 40. So, okay, 25, not bad. Yeah.
Good
What do you know,
for
Grandma?
taking that step.
Yeah, man, it's super interesting. Like, I think my first foray into sales training was with TJ, so with Travis Jones, right? Which was really sort of heavily inspired by Gulliver Giles, I don't know whose stuff he's sort of basing it on. It could be sort of his own stuff. Like a lot of my stuff is like, it's a lot of Jeremy's stuff, but then it's also like the real nitty gritty stuff that we teach is very much like stuff that we've developed, like through all the sales that we've done. So like it uses like that NEPQ framework, but then like all the hooks and anchors and objection handling, that's all our stuff. Like that's all, not that I'm going to call it proprietary, because it's just fucking words that you say from your face, you know? So like, I don't think you can really proprietary words, although I think you can, but yeah, like it's super, like the first style that I learned, which is probably like more damaging in the long run compared to like, I think Dan has a very consultative doctor frame. Is that right? Like that's kind of the framework that he tries to set up.
It's a bit more authoritative. And actually what I was thinking the other day when I'm hearing other sales reps kind of come through entry-level programs with the script is, in a way, he was very much saying like, hey, like, don't follow a script. Like, here's the framework, and start figuring out how to ask better questions, actually how to listen. So those who actually like took to heart what he was saying, like it forced me to how to figure my way out, how to kind of navigate that conversation and be more flexible that way from the get-go. But I think a lot of people could have benefited from having a script that works. And I know you said that it's like, well, sure, you hadn't used a script either, but that's because we never had a script that actually worked. So perhaps maybe that was the reason too, but it did force me initially to get a lot of those reps in and just kind of fail forward. It's like fall flat in my face, figure it out, and keep talking and keep going. Right. So that's important too.
All right, cool. Yeah, man. So like, I think he would have benefited from a script, but probably doesn't have one. So, right. Like, I think Dan, from what I've seen, is like a brilliant marketer, and I'm sure he's probably a pretty decent salesperson in his own right, but it's sort of like Cardone. You know, like I don't think Cardone is like the most skilled individual salesperson, but what he does have is a bull in a china shop mentality. And I don't think he's going to take no for an answer. And he's done so much authority building over the years. I don't think it fucking matters what he says. You know, like he's done the selling for himself already. So is he a great salesperson? Absolutely. Is he a master tactician of sales? Probably not. You know, but like Belfort, dude's a fucking master tactician.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way of denying that. That dude absolutely knows how to manipulate and persuade.
Yeah.
You know, there's tens of millions of dollars of reasons why. What's that?
I'd put Dan in the same boat as Gran in that space.
Yeah, so would I. Yeah. And then I'd take Jeremy, like Jeremy's a master tactician. You know, there's a big difference between like someone who can really tear down and sell someone who has no idea who they are. Because if you can sell someone who has no idea who you are, like that's persuasion in its truest form, which is like, that's what I like. I like that. But then I'm also like all our strategy around the podcast and the channel, it's also to like, I'm trying to get the best of both worlds, essentially. Like, you know, do the pre-selling, but then,
right? Like you got to take it from square one. It's like, they know nothing about you. Could be just a random person. You got to discover the need. You got to build a case. It's like, I kind of like it like that sometimes as well too.
Yeah. That's why I like selling other people's stuff, because like selling our stuff is so easy. It's sort of like, I think you lose a lot of your ability to be like that tactician, which is why most sales trainers, like all they do is sell their own program. Like, but Jeremy doesn't even sell his own program. He sells the other stuff. So like for the company that he consults with, he takes sales calls every week, you know, and he actually gets commission for those. And then he gets the override on all the commissions and he does the management stuff. I think he earns about $250,000-300,000 a month just from one client. Because they're doing like $8 million a month in sales and he's the one that runs the whole team, right? So like, you know, he's still doing that stuff every single day. Whereas I think one of the big mistakes that a lot of the sales guys out there make is like, they just start selling their own shit, and like selling your own shit is too easy. Like, dude, when I hop on a call to sell like my own sales training, it's like a 20-minute call.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, you know, like one of the guys, shout out to Rubi Wilson. Like he messaged, tell him what you said.
Rubi will be listening to this as well, no doubt.
Yeah.
Rubi works for Ryan Stewman. He runs closer memes. And he sent me a message the other day saying, hey man, I think it's, because I invested in his Apex and gave him the easiest sales. Didn't even have a sales call. I'm just like, hey, send me the payment link. I'm in, man. Let's get you some commissions. And he messaged me back, probably as a return of favor, saying, hey, I think I'm ready to start upskilling and take things to the next level. And I just wrote back. I sent him a meme and said, are you sure you want to have this conversation, mate? It's going to result in you passing on your credit card details. And he was like, yes. I'm like, great. Let's do
this. And then I sent him a GIF, which is like sliding into DMs, like, hey. And he's like, you must be here to get my money. And then I got a Gollum meme. It's mine. And he was like, take it, it's yours. So he's like, how much time do you need to sell me? I said, I don't know, 20 minutes? Depends how much of a fight you put up. He's like, yeah, sweet. Let's chat tomorrow. I was like, cool, man. Sounds good. That's the power of content, right? That's the power of like authority building. Like, you know, I can just tell someone, hey bro, as long as you're cool, like you're going to buy. So if you want to hop on the phone, we can hop on the phone. You know, we can go through the process if you'd like, but you know,
I love that guy. He's hilarious.
He's awesome too. I'm actually wearing his hat.
Oh, nice. I'm so glad we're working with him again. Oh yeah, nice. Yeah.
Crush the day, baby. Crush the day. This took like 8 weeks to get here. I bought the last one. I'm the only guy in Australia with this hat, exclusive.
Worth it.
So yeah, it's a great hat. Fits well. You know, we got some merch coming out.
Did you
more than just the mugs, eh?
Did you see the designs, Matt, yet?
Yeah. I'm getting some other ones made too. I'm going to compare. I got like a vintage t-shirt designer. You know me, I like spending money. So anyway, it's going to be, you can run, but you'll just buy tired. That's going to be the tag.
And for the guys listening, in due time, there'll be some, let's say, some payment gateways set up where you can purchase these said products from and enjoy them.
I mean, there's no lack of money, the velocity. So anyway, let's kind of get back to it. So the tactician side of things, yeah. So like, I think, you know, like for me, kind of going back to it, I learned from Travis Jones, who I think still does. I don't think he does much sales coaching these days. He's more of like a business coach. And yeah, anyway, we won't go too deep into that. And then, yeah, he learned his stuff from Gulliver Giles. And I also did Gulliver Giles' stuff. And Gulliver has like the most aggressive form of sales I've ever seen. There is like, I have never experienced anything on the planet that is more aggressive than his.
And that was almost your first experience, right?
What was that?
It was like your first experience too. So you would have come in thinking, oh, this is what sales is.
Oh man, he's called Thor the Sales Warlord. And like, shout out to him. I mean, we disagree on a lot of things, and we've had some disagreements in our day, right? Both personal and professional. But like, nothing but respect for the man. He is an absolute fucking savage. Like, and he is a master. What he's really good at is picking up what someone's ego needs to hear. Like, really good at it. And he sold me and my business partner at the same time brilliantly. And he was able to individually pinpoint what emotional driver each of us had and then create the sales call around his emotional driver, which is a need for numbers and certainty, and my emotional driver, which is like ego and status. Right? So he was able to identify that, pinpoint that, and pitch both of us the same product in two different ways at the same time. It was absolutely masterful, to the point that when we got on the upsell call to do the next program, we didn't want to do it. We didn't want to just not have the call. We had to develop a strategy beforehand of why we couldn't buy and write it down. That's how good that fucking guy is. Now, does that translate into like other guys' abilities to sell that way? I don't think it translates that well, because he's selling his shit. So like the amount of authority and that he can drive home, and it's like when we sell sales training, you can use your sales skills as the pitch, and your ability to stay in the saddle and smash and just do stuff. Like, so I don't know how well it translates for non-business owners. Whereas when you're the guy on camera, you can sell that way. And I think it's a really good way to sell if you're the guy on camera. I think it creates some issues on the back end. I think you're going to have a higher refund rate. You're going to have some issues there. But that's how I learned how to sell, which I think was great, because like you really lean into objection handling. And his philosophy is they buy or hang up. There is nothing in between.
Yeah, zero
That's
follow-ups ever.
There is no, they do not allow follow-ups. So when they do management consulting, if somebody does a follow-up, like they get in trouble. Right?
Even if they sell.
But it does make for killers on the first call, right? So there's a, but I think it destroys a business in the long term. Like when we took over Sports Model Project, they were doing the sales for that, and we doubled their sales and doubled their income, and they started getting a lot more happier clients and a lot happier sales, because it can destroy a salesperson as well. When you sell that way, which is how I sold for like a long time, like a slightly softer version of that, like it's really tough to do that.
Mentally exhausting.
Yeah, it's really, really exhausting. Like you end up just being really angry every time someone doesn't sell, because you feel like you've lost a boxing match. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's tough mentally. So I think like the authority, that's a real authoritative frame, but it sounds like it's kind of a softer version of what Dan teaches.
Yeah. And like for me, what was interesting, like kind of coming more into your world and kind of being drawn more to wanting to work closer with you and expand that relationship, is the fact that like I had done pretty well and done on some different projects. And I thought I was doing pretty good, because it's all about kind of environment. Like compared to others, I was closing 25, 30% pretty consistently. And I was like, oh, well, pretty sweet. Like I take calls and 33 out of 10 close. Like that's not bad. Right. And I was still making more money than I ever had. So to me, I was winning. But then when you kind of started to post some of your numbers, and it was less like logically I knew different offers, different commissions, that was relative, but I was like the percentage at which you were closing, I was almost kind of like that Robert Bannister kind of moment for me. I was like, you can close at 65, 70%. Like, okay, I'm interested. Tell me more. Like they got to be doing something right. And then then I met you and Marco, and I was like, okay, one, these guys are just like, they're not getting off the phone. Like they're just not taking no. And so that was kind of a different style that I was like, I wonder, for me with personal training, it was the same thing, is like, can I borrow from everybody? Right. So I was starting to be like, okay, like I don't have Marco's personality. I don't have your personality, but I like little bits and pieces. And then I started to kind of figure out, oh, there's like logic to this as well. Right. And so that's kind of like.
I think that brings up a good point in mistakes that people make, is trying to like emulate a person. Like one of the biggest reasons why. Yeah. Yeah, like you can't do it. Like you have to have your own style. And that's something that when I'm teaching people, like I'm very, very acutely aware of, like, don't sell like me. Like take some of the principles and concepts that I use and then apply them to your sales calls. But I was like, if you try and be me, you're going to fall flat on your fucking face. In the same way that if I try and be you, I'll fall flat on my face. Like that's not a place of like arrogance or authority. It's just like, I'm not you, you're not me, don't be me. And I think one of the reasons why like when people start NEPQ style selling in particular, which I think we saw some of the teething issues, that they try and be Jeremy and they fall flat on their fucking face and their close rates plummet in the beginning and then they skyrocket. But there's a way to mitigate that where like, you just got to realize like some of the stuff that like a really high level salesperson does, like intentional self-deprecation, you know what I mean? To like lower your authority, but it's on purpose. And it's to status align. Like if you want to go into like the technical aspect of it, like if you listen to like something like Flip the Script by Oren Klaff, right? Who's a brilliant salesperson, that status alignment for him is really important. Like when he's talking to the valet, he wants to have status alignment with the valet. When he's talking to a billionaire, he wants to have status alignment with the billionaire. Do you know what I mean? Because people want to be on the same level as other people. You don't want to be above or below. You want to be the same. So like, you know, when Jeremy does like, hey, he's like, hey, what are you doing? Nothing, man. Just being boring. It's a brilliant opener because it's like self-deprecating and it automatically puts the focus back on the prospect. Like there's so much psychology behind the little things.
Yeah,
but if you don't understand
status drop, right? It breaks rapport in a way that actually makes him more human, especially from his frame too, because they're like imagining that he's probably sitting in his castle in his mansion and who am I, right? So it's like, oh, just being boring or just taking the dogs for a walk. It's like, oh, that's something that everyone does. You're human now, right?
Yeah.
But it allows you to
just counting my money. Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah.
Just swimming in my money bin. What are you doing? Yeah. So, you know, I think it's important that like, but you have to understand like what you're doing. And so like just going out there and doing these things and trying to emulate what somebody says, like specifically, is a terrible idea. Like you have to understand the concept and then apply the concept.
Yeah. Well, we've been coaching around it too, from a little bit more of like a theme of identity. Like oftentimes, okay, people are getting more into NEPQ. To me, it's like, don't become like an NEPQ salesperson, become like Will, the NEPQ salesperson. Like don't lose yourself in who you're trying to like model off. And so to me, I always see it as like an expansion. It's like what got you here is what you're already doing. Let's add to it. It's not replacing or washing away. It's like, let's stack more stuff on top because now I got more in my bag of tricks to kind of start utilizing and pulling from in different situations. Because some type of prospects really work with NEPQ. Some kinds, they need the beatdown, right? And if I can do both, then I can play the player a little bit more effectively.
Absolutely. You know, so I find like most of my sales call end in a beatdown.
Yeah.
Right. Like, exactly. But that's just because of the level of prospect that I'm, you know, but like I get all the information that makes the beatdown effective. And by beatdown, like, I mean, like it's not, you know, the people are probably getting the wrong example of like, everything is still very low key. Like my tone and my temper never really changed from how I'm talking right now. Like it never changes. But like, you know, you give people more and more doses of reality.
Real talk.
And like, yeah, it gets more and more real. So it's like, as we go through an objection handling cycle, like you have to kind of build on that. You know, it's funny. Like I was talking to Yash today in a role play that we ran. And for those of you, like Yash is only 16 years old. And he's got great sales prowess, but most of that is going to be reflected. And if he's listening, I told him this, like a role play is no different for me, is no different for Will or James than the real thing. It's no different. But for a 16-year-old, it's very different. You know what I mean? Because like you haven't had that level of experience. You don't have the level of confidence when you're speaking to someone because like there's something in the back of your head that like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like I can't really challenge this guy. He's 35 years old. You know what I mean? But in a role play scenario, you feel comfortable to do that. And so like, it's a hard one. He was like, what would you say in this situation? I said, well, what I would say is borderline irrelevant to you because you can't say the things that I can say. I say so much raucous shit on a day-to-day basis to all kinds of people. And it just goes down well. I have like, I'm lucky. I must have a nice face or I'm good at doing small inflections in my smile or something that lets people know that I'm not taking it seriously. Like I'm just joking. But if you can't do that, don't do that. Like some of the shit that I say to Rode or fucking James or whatever, you know what I mean? Like I say horrible shit to people, but everyone knows that I care about them. So it's like, and when I say talk to a prospect, that's why I love Zoom so much.
Did you just say you cared about me? That's cute.
You're a piece of shit. You called me your mentor the other day, motherfucker. So like,
what did I call you?
You called me. You said I'm your mentor.
Yeah. Well, you used to be.
I used to be.
I hired you as a mentor.
That's the most backhanded comment ever. I've outgrown you, bitch.
Yeah. It's like
you've never outgrown a goddamn thing in your life.
That was double-edged. That was good.
Yeah. But yeah, like I love Zoom. It allows you to get away with so much more because like you can say something fairly.
Body language
like,
pays a huge homage.
Yeah,
to
and then you
the
can
way
just be like, you just smile, and they know that like.
But
yeah,
but
it's like,
also
it's good,
I
right?
know that you get away with it because people know that you're sad on the inside, and you're only saying that to make you feel better, so they have sympathy. Like
I'm
we
sad.
get it, it's fine.
I'm super sad. Yeah.
But anyway, back on track.
Yeah. Have you seen my wife?
Yeah, you're punching.
Punching well above my weight. So yeah, I'm good to go.
Don Bradman average, right? One of the things that I found is really interesting for you is your background from a study level. What have you taken out of your psychology degree that you've taken those skills and are able to apply on sales calls that make your job easier? And we'll ask the same question again for managing people.
Yeah, great question. I think for me, like I've got a bachelor's of science in psychology, but I started in biomedical engineering. So I have second year university completed in like 8 different subjects.
I don't know what any of those words mean. Huh? What? I used to shoot people from a long way away.
Yeah. Point is though, is like, if you look at like what psychology is, it's the study of an individual, opposed to like sociology, is study of groups of people and things like that. And so to me, what I've taken away with it is probably like my fundamental ethos in sales, which people have heard me say is play the player. And what I mean by that is like, we are all so like uniquely different on the surface, but at the same time, there's a lot of common themes, values, and issues. There's only so many problems we can go through in life. So what I always like kind of do from a psychology background is it's like, I want to figure out kind of the Venn diagram, like what they fall into, the stereotypes, and then also where are they uniquely different? That's only them, because that's kind of where that magic is. And if I can kind of find that on a call, that's what I start to integrate. The other thing from your answer is kind of probably more from a motivation and goal psychology, like understanding like approach and avoidance goals, understanding literally how like, delayed gratification, like just those like obvious concepts play into people being in a sales situation or people making a big commitment or a decision to their life. So when you're able to kind of fundamentally look at it from kind of more of a, okay, like this is like, we all go through this, but what's the like unique difference this time? I find like that's kind of an angle that really allows me to see like that gold nugget for that conversation that's going to be unique.
Can I ask you an interesting question? Do you think it hurts you anyway?
In what way? How do you mean? Does what hurt me?
Do you think that like sometimes when you know how the cake is made, the cake doesn't taste as good?
I think what comes up for me is like, it's a question of novelty. And because I've found myself going through phases of like complacency, like it's like, I already know what's going to happen in a few minutes or a few moves, that it's like, it's easy to kind of look at that. But then to me, it ties exactly back to what I just said, is like, to me, as soon as I find myself, oh, this is another one of those people that has 3 kids and no income, like I'll start forming these assumptions. I'm immediately like, what's that unique little difference that I don't know about them yet? And that's what I start searching for. It's like actually how I come back to refocusing is I'm like, where is that? Because there's something that makes them unique. Let me find it, right? Especially those people that are super dry, aren't giving me any emotion. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna figure a way out in this onion. So like, that's how I kind of like re-engage, if that's
so what do you think? Sure. Because obviously we have similar but very different styles. Like I'd say me and Marco are probably more similar. Me and Marco are much more of like one call, one close, but we don't get that many follow-up sales. Do you know what I mean? Like we still get follow-up sales, but like, they're saying yes on the phone. So what do you think, the difference is? Because you're much more of like you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're much more of like a 2-3 call close person. You still get like equivalent number of sales. Like it's not an output issue or like a numbers issue, but you tend to really put people into processes and farm them over a much longer period of time, or like don't necessarily get all the commitment on the phone, but the people you build enough rapport and you build the need enough to like get that person through a process where you get them like at the end of the week or at the end of the month.
You're also like significantly well ahead of everyone else in our company in your ability to farm and develop the processes to get people into buyers that weren't initially buyers.
Well, and this is interesting. That actually ties into the psychology. Like the background is like, to me, I like thinking like everything I do is reverse engineered. It's like, if I want a better answer, what question is going to give me those type of answers? Or if I want to get a text message to somebody to respond to me, what would I respond to? Right. Like certain things like that I'm kind of playing with. I think like from what you guys are getting at is I feel like my style comes a little bit more from like a coaching background a little bit. And there are times where I have also learned to play my strengths. Right. And that's the thing is like with listen to like Matt and Marco, I had to come up in my objection handling skills. There were times when Matt said like, go burn a bridge and see what happens. Like, have you ever had that? Like where you just don't hang up? But I'm like, no, I'm like, all right, well, let's go find out. Right. So, but for me, sometimes it's almost like I'm good at reading people in the sense that I understand like the path of least resistance. And I'm like, hey, like it matters less right now whether I get dollars and cents on the first call and more about their commitment to change. And I kind of drill way deeper because if I can get them leaving the call stoked about their life, stoked about what they're going to do and kind of acting as if they're already in the program, that's when I create a container around following up that's entirely different about, hey, do you have the money yet? It's like, hey, how are your goals going on your life? Because we had that type of conversation. We didn't have, hey, are you doing this program or not? Hey, like, what are you committed to being in the next year? And how can I best support you? Or how can best me, an influencer, support you in doing that? It's like you don't get friend zoned, but you do kind of continue that trusted advisor frame past the initial conversation so that you then can kind of develop that. And then that also then snowballs into referrals, snowballs into actually like people getting good results in the program because they actually feel empowered instead of like coerced. And there's obviously ways to do that in one phone call with certain types of people, but other types of people, you can just sense that they're not going to go on the day. Sometimes you can tip them over. Other times it's in your best interest to build that trust factor. Because a lot of the times that's probably the objection that they don't close is when they are just new. They just don't know. So, just like when anybody's taking a serious decision, good, take a week, but like then do something. And what I do is I decide to govern that process. It's like, if you're going to spend 3 days, if you're going to spend a week, then we're going to figure out what you're going to do in that week together so that I'm still included. And that's kind of how I kind of come into the follow-up game and create containers like that.
It sounds like you take a little bit of like that therapist role as a long-term solution. Therapist role isn't probably the...
You're like facilitating the change.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, because a lot of it is like, that's the thing is a lot of this is real talk around fundamentals. It's like focus on the actions and the outcomes will produce themselves. That's pretty much true of anything. So more or less, a lot of the common themes that I find in all of the conversations I've had is people aren't just taking enough action. So if anything else, if I can get them off the phone taking more action, I know they have to be ahead. They can't not be further ahead if they do something after getting off the phone with me. So it's that like, yes, I kind of force facilitation. Because I just assume that's why they reached out to me in the first place is sometimes people just need a nudge. And if I hear their commitment to change, then I will hold the line and kind of like be like, all right, well, if you're committed to change, the bus leaves at 9:00 tomorrow, you're going to do this. Here's our itinerary. Let's do it.
Yeah. I think like, I think you said something good there. It's like leaning into your strengths. Like my strengths are not detail, like admin, stuff like that. So like I'm good at following up with people, like, cause I follow up, but like, I'm never going to have a comprehensive follow-up structure that I personally follow. And I think like, I've never really had to develop that because like that skill set, because like, I'm good at following up. So I'll schedule all my follow-ups. Like I'll schedule it, but like I said, the level of detail that you go into in your follow-up, I think is much better. And I think that like, there's good parts and bad parts for both. Like for me, I know my personality doesn't allow for it. So I close most people on the first call. Right. Or I schedule a very quick follow-up. It's like, we're speaking tomorrow. Right. But for you, cause that's how your brain works, you work well. So you can facilitate people over a longer period of time. Whereas I know that I would just like, because even though like I don't actually have someone to help me with follow-ups, like I just do everything myself because I don't really do like that high a volume of selling. Do you know what I mean?
You rely on your strength of all you need to do is get the person on the phone and you win. Will relies on his process to get that person on the phone to win.
It's like leaning into your personality, not trying to emulate somebody, but if you have a process that works, just fucking do it. Like if you close 90% of people in 3 calls, just do 3 fucking calls. Like who cares? Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter. Like as long as you like a lot of people, will come to us and go like, is the goal more money? Is it more sales, more money, or high close rate? Like, what is it? What's the goal? Because like there are different ways to skin the cat. And for me personally, I don't care about the close rate really, like, because it might not be an accurate reflection of what's actually going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's abysmal, we need to have a look at it, right? You know what I mean? And there are some actions that need to be taken. But if we're just like, especially like for Serhnant, those sales are like, not many of them are signing on call one. I don't give a fuck what you do, like unless you start dropping serious hammers. But then like, there's no way that you cross that line where you're not going to get follow-ups. So it's like, if your goal is to make the most amount of sales over the longest period of time, is that really the best way to do it? I would say sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Like that's to me, that's what I laugh about. I was like, I somehow wrote an email, we're writing them, and it's like literally things are happening. So it's like we've been refining that process, but you're right. Like there is a bit of a buyer's journey where we need to respect that process as well.
Yeah. So what do you think the key things are for the guys listening of how they can get better at follow-ups? Because you are the master at it, to get more sales and to nurture people into sales that have potentially gone cold, or they've allowed to go cold because they don't have the process in place. What's your best advice?
To me, I guess what I've been thinking about is kind of using a garden as an analogy. And so you've got trees, shrubs, annuals, ferns, different types of pots and things like that, vegetables. It's like, but every type of plant or thing in the garden requires a different type of care at a different type of frequency by a different type of kind of method, right? So if you can start to either combine that analogy with like sports, what I'm looking for is like those patterns. That's what I'm looking for. It's like, oh, this is this type of lead, I'm going to run this type of play. So all I do with my follow-ups, it's like, yes, it's play the player, but that's also because, hey, there's only so many different types of versions of following up. So it's like I come up with plays. So then it's really not that hard to like adjust it slightly for the individual and then manage it from like a logistical point of view, because I've spent time like tinkering the play. And then once the play is set, then it kind of follows. So what you're trying to do is kind of match circles with circles, squares with squares. You're like, okay, a prospect that matches these type of things would kind of fall into that assembly line, and vice versa. And so you can kind of start mapping that out. And the basic categories would be like, obviously someone who no shows, obviously someone who says like, this is not going to happen for at least 3 to 4 months. I have no money. Then there's like people that are, fire hot, closing in 7 days kind of thing, and everything in between. So you can start with general categories and then get more and more specific if you so choose. Cool. Does that take away a bull? I'm not sure.
I really like the analogy.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's important for people to, like, if you're a full-time sales rep, like, and you don't have those follow-up processes in place, like, you're just severely limiting your income massively, like, because follow-up is like, when I was just full-time selling, like, my follow-up game was tenacious, and I would follow up with everybody else's no sales. And then I would cold call the list of people who had opted in over the last 6 months but not showed up to a call, and then do my no-shows. Like, you've got to have like those set activities, like what happens if somebody no-shows? First of all, you have a no-show process for that person, but then you also have a process for yourself as to what you do with that time. Because like jerking off and watching Netflix is not a really productive use of time. If you have 2 or 3 no-shows in a day, Jesus, so like, but there's a lot of things that you can do in that time that are really, really productive, that are going to be revenue generating activities, and that's why I like when like the guys have got Facebook groups, because you could spend an hour in a Facebook group. If you can do an hour in a Facebook group, you can book 1 to 2 sales calls for sure, if it's a nice active group. But you take like the closing code group, link in description, super active group. We have like 400 or 500 members, and I think like it's like a 98% active rate. So 98% of the people are interacting in one stage. Like if we really wanted to, and we did lots of sales coaching, somebody could be let loose in there and they could probably do 2 to 3 sales a week, based off the amount of activity that's in there, because like we're providing value to people for free. So it's like, hey, we provide more value if you give us money, So having things like that you can do, and then looking at things from a proactive level. Like I think the one thing that's taken you and Marco to the next level is like responsibility and ownership. Mm-hmm, and so absolutely. Like giving, like, Marco used to whinge and fucking bitch about everything. Like, and I've told him that, and this is not a secret. So Marco
was very aware.
You used to whinge and complain about everything. And there's no leads. Rah. It's like, all right, dude. Well, let's control what we can control. You know what I mean? But then as soon as we gave Dan for him to develop, Dan started giving him the same bullshit whinging that he gave us. And he's like, oh, this is unproductive. We need to just find a way to fix this. So then he started coming to us and saying, hey, there was a lack of leads, so I did this. Like, fantastic. And similar sort of thing with you. It's like, as we grow a little team under you, like, we're no longer just going, I have this problem. We're getting told, I had a problem. This is what we're doing to solve it. And I go, cool. This is my take on that problem. Feel free to do whatever you want with it. I don't really care. Just get it done.
Well, the other good one is, this is the problem. Here's what I thought is best. Can you have a look over it and maybe give some advice? And this is perfect. There's problem solved.
Yeah, and most of the time it's like, yeah, that's what I would do. That's sweet. And I think like that's why like sales snipers is such a good name, because like in the military, the snipers are the only ones that do not get told how to do something. It's the only element in which there is no plan given. Because usually like assaulters, they go, we're going to go from here to here to here to here. Charges are set here. This is how it's done. That's all set from like a high level sergeant below. But like a sniper team is like, hey, we need you guys to do this. And we go, okay. And it's just done. Like, that's it. Because like they don't really understand what you do, how you do it. So it's like, let's just give you an outcome. You guys are big boys. You can figure it out yourself. And then we just create our own internal plan, and then we just execute it, right? We don't have to tell them what we're doing, where we're placing charges, where people are going to be. We just go out there and do it. And so like that sort of mentality, I think, is super important. I think it's one of the reasons, like, as people kind of rise through the ranks of the business, like people are becoming more and more independent and more problem solving and more solution based. Because like if I have a problem, like there's really no point whinging about it. It's like, okay, we don't have leads. Okay, fuck. Like if I don't have leads as a salesperson, what do I do? First of all, set myself up so I have redundancies. It's not a problem. So like I don't want to just work on one account. If you're out there and you're a salesperson working on one account, you're leaving yourself wide open. There's a real problem there. Like, and it's a problem that like, I don't want my family's ability to eat relied on one guy's ability to get leads. That just seems like fucking stupid to me. Right. I don't care who they are. So give yourself some redundancy. Also then find all the pools of influence that you have at your disposal. Like if someone is an influencer or a business owner and they're doing the right things, like they should, like for me, like, I mean, how easy would it be to be my sales guy? Like I have a YouTube channel, I have a podcast, I have an email list, I have a Facebook group, I have a personal Facebook. I put a post up yesterday on my personal Facebook page. I got like 300 comments in like 12 hours. I was like, man, that's like 300 leads. Go do your thing, buddy. They're all people who want something from us. So it's like, that's not hard, you know? So like, I'm trying to do my thing. I mean, we don't really have a sales guy for us. It's just kind of like whoever reaches out to us. Yeah. You know, James can be our sales guy, right?
Sure.
Well, you outpitched those other people the other day.
I did, yeah. No, not just you that I outpitched.
And yeah, so you know, having those things, I think that's you know something that, you know, the more responsibility that people get and the more like ownership they take over the problems, and the more like solution focused they become, the faster they can take responsibility for their own shit and just start getting stuff done.
Yeah, it was a pattern recognition thing for me too. Like I started to get, like in the last couple of months, because I've been not only taking more calls, but having more people to manage, I've been listening to way more calls and reviewing them. And it's like, because I'm getting so much more input and seeing so many different types of prospects, I'm learning so much faster and then able to help with a lot of more situations faster as well. So that's also kind of creating that lift too. It's like, hey, like I got to stay tip of the spear, just like, you know, like as James talks about, like all of our values, like from top to bottom, we can all hold each other kind of to the same standard, right? So I've got to be doing what I'm asking everyone else to, just as much ownership as they're taking up as well, right? So
absolutely. Yeah.
One other thing I was just thinking of real quick on the following up side of it, was to do with like what James was talking about, is it starts on the first call. That's probably the biggest thing that I would say with my follow-up process is if it's not closing on that day, like I'm ready to sit for another 5 minutes, like I was objection handling, but tying it down, because when the leads dry out, that's when you actually have all of those good relationships to go and talk about. But I'm really doing like, not only setting the follow-up script in the game kind of on that first call, but as soon as that call's over, give yourself like 2 minutes to write down all the notes and put that in your CRM, because then when you are doing that follow-up, you save yourself time on the flip side of like, what did I say to that person again? Or things like that. So you can really kind of be more effective with insert personal token into the email that you came up with. You're like, oh yeah, family with the kids, right? So you can have those bullet points readily available as well.
That makes value-based follow-up way easier as well, because if they're struggling with like sales or lead gen or something, then like your influencer's done a particular piece of content on that. Like you can then send that to them and go, hey, like I remember during our talk, you were struggling with some branding issues. Here's a great video for you to watch. And then that gives you a reason to follow up. So like you're giving yourself reasons to do stuff like, hey, how'd you go with that video?
Exactly. So I call it using a different container for following up, right? It's like change the narrative.
And your note taking is incredibly detailed to be able to have those points to speak about later on down the track.
Well, see, what I do is I dictate a lot of them. So like I like taking them on paper, but because typing is loud at times. So what I'll do is at the end of the day, I'll just sit there and dictate them all. And then I'll just drop them in the client files. And then that they're always there, because that way, and I usually write bullet points, because combining the bullet points with hearing their voice again, I immediately can kind of bring all the contextual stuff back up again. Because if I can, I always listen to the last 2 or 3 minutes of like a triage call or the call that was done prior. And review the whole client file, because then I'm just going in with the right energy. I remember like how it was left. And that's like, it's information's there. It's kind of like body language. Like if you're not paying attention to it, it's like, it's free information, right? So on a Zoom call, if you're not listening, do they sound distracted? Like this happened today, is like people were even watching me too. It's like I was on a call and like you could hear halfway through the pitch, they were ruffling or something. And so then I asked a question and I broke my kind of like flow and I brought them back in. And then it's like, okay, now we can kind of reestablish. But it's like, you got to be kind of using that sensory information to be able to kind of have that feedback, because it is a two-way street.
Marco kicked a guy off a sales call the other day because he was rolling a joint.
Oh, really? He didn't tell me about that one.
It's like, hey, bro, you're clearly not taking this very seriously. I'm out.
How bizarre.
It's just cig of weed. All right, that's a good time to stop. It's we're about 47 minutes in, so it's a good time. Okay, guys, I hope that you guys got a lot out of this. And, Will has come a long way. He's making great money, being a really, really productive and valuable member of the team. And I pay the invoices, so I know he's doing just fine.
He's doing very well.
Got a nice new watch as well. Nice little
Thanks, boys.
Aqua Racer. Yeah, for his 1-year anniversary gift. So,
pretty sweet.
I think the important takeaways for today is that, like, if you're a sales guy, one, have a really, really strong follow-up system in place and have those pools and, farm that garden, as it were, and then take away some of the points that Will said. But also then, like, just like some of the stuff about training is just, don't try and emulate somebody, but learn from someone who is better than you or better than you at a particular thing, right? And don't try and like necessarily emulate it, but take the principles. And that's why coaching is so good, because you can ask, what were you doing? What were you thinking? And that's how you start to create your own internal processes where you can start to be ahead of the game. And like Will said, like, I'm doing this to set up this. I'm doing this to set up this. And then when you can start actively doing that in a sales call, that's when you start closing like nearly everybody, because you're playing chess against someone who doesn't know they're playing chess. And like, that's how you win. So, all right, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, do all that kind of good stuff. Join the closing code, give us $25 and then $50 a week after that for your 6 role plays. One of the role plays, or maybe 2 of the role plays, is even done by Mr. William himself. One of them's done by me. One of them's done by Marco.
Oh, sorry. If you've had any questions from anything we've said today, just post them in the closing code group and, tag Will, and we'll get around to answering them, either myself or someone else on our team will. So it's a really good resource. Take advantage.
Don't forget to check out our website, salessniper.net. And if you want to go /free resources, a bunch of stuff there. And we'll put the link to the closing code and also the free Facebook group, the closing code Facebook group, if you want some good, fun sales banter. All right, guys, thanks very much. And we will speak to you soon.
Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only.